What's going on, Ma? It's Monday. It's the best damn day of the week. It's here at the watch list. I'm this guy, and it's still Monday. We're getting the week started. Everyone, let me make sure my volume is up. Nice, you can hear me and all. Lovely times. Hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. I was at a baseball field for the entire weekend. Man, was I at a baseball field? 14U baseball. You may catch it every once in a while. 4 games I rolled through, except I wasn't doing anything. I was standing there and sitting there and videoing. And also 1 game, I was right back on the field coaching because I just can't hang it up. I can't get rid of it. I can't stop doing it. In case you guys don't know, yes, I have a child. Yes, that boy plays baseball. Yes, the season has begun. It's almost like, it's constant or something around here. Good times though. A little bit of a detachment from what's going on in our world and our news. So I dove my ass right back in this morning. Of course, little sprinklings over the weekend and discovering what was happening. But there's some developments, I suppose, or there's more pressure, is what I'm actually going to start with regarding this administration, and specifically some Republicans coming after them. But I did want to say one thing really fast because I glanced at the chat. I wasn't able to call you guys early nerds today. My bad. I was all of like 2 minutes late, I believe. But one person stuck out to me with one thing that they said. Snizzy22 asked, because my mother likes to hang out in the chat, it'd be fun to get a story about JR growing up now and again from you, with JR's approval, of course. Well, my approval would be based on what story we're talking about. My mother's too kind to me. She wouldn't tell any of the very true, insane stories about my growing up and my tendencies. My sisters might, but I don't think she would. So I would approve. That's fine. Ask away. And I think just even on her own terms, she'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to tell that story. Not going to tell that one. I was a mild child. I didn't do anything wrong. I followed the rules. I was a good kid. Isn't that right, Ma? Anyways, let's get started. I know there's a lot happening. Maybe those stories will be told. And once they are, you guys let me know. I miss a lot of the things you guys chat about. But since we're getting started, maybe Moms tells one of these stories and then suddenly we get some more likes, a couple more subscriptions, and a couple more shares. Let's do that now. I'm going to like that stream here. So before we get started, I want to dive right in with a little bit of pressure for more Republicans, that is, on this administration and their handling of what I've been saying for a very long time is the most important story of this whole administration. The biggest thing that they're looking to cover up, because this exposes so many other things about our world, who's controlling us, what they've always been doing that people maybe suspected but didn't really fully know. And those who didn't know, I'm sorry, had to keep under wraps. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with what Thomas Massie was saying over the weekend. He did some Sunday shows, I believe, and he's calling out more of these instances of what this administration is up to. I guess he's treading a little lightly at times in the way that he's specifically going after the president and his involvement in this, but still, I think he's taken a couple more gloves off, and I'm enjoying this part.
Responsibility. And just very quickly, if you will, you've supported most of what Donald Trump has done during his presidency. But because of your actions with these files, he is supporting your primary opponent and has waged very personal attacks on you. I know we just have a few seconds here, but just your reaction to that.
Look, this is about the Epstein class. The people who are funding the attacks against me, they may or may not be implicated in these files, but they were certainly rubbing shoulders with the people who are in these files. They're billionaires who are friends with these people, and that's what I'm up against in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump told us that even though, he had dinner with these kinds of people in New York City and West Palm Beach, that he would be transparent, but he's not. He's still in with the Epstein class. This is the Epstein administration, and they're attacking me for trying to get these files released.
And again, I'm going to say President Trump has not been accused of anything criminal here. Thank you very much.
Let's start with the bagging with Martha Raddatz. Donald Trump is, she wants to point out, because of legal issues, I suppose, President Trump has not been accused of anything criminal. I thought he was. There's just no investigations and there's no charges coming forward because he controls this Department of Justice. And previous Department of Justice wanted to continue to keep people like him and others that have been named and accused of many things in these files from facing any kind of accountability, even when it comes down to charges or exposure of it. That's why this is such a big deal. So fine, Martha Raddatz can say he hasn't been accused of anything criminal, but I mean, I thought he was. Maybe she meant to say he hasn't been charged or convicted of anything criminal. At least in this, he's been accused and charged and convicted of many other lawless activities. You know, we've seen all of that. But still, the main point here is Thomas Massie. Still, you see how he switched up the language here, and I actually like that part. This is the Epstein class, and this is the Epstein administration. Yes, that encompasses this entire administration. That encompasses the most important thing that they're looking to cover up. So he's taking a few more gloves off. And even when talking about Pam Bondi, who's a part of this same Epstein administration that's covering up these Epstein files blatantly right in front of our faces, he took a few shots at her too.
Do you still have confidence in Pam Bondi as Attorney General?
I don't think Pam Bondi has confidence in Pam Bondi. She wasn't confident enough to engage in anything but name calling in a hearing. And so, no, I don't have confidence in her. She hasn't got any sort of accountability there at the DOJ. When I asked her specifically who redacted Leslie Wexner's name from the one document that mattered, she couldn't give me an answer. She wouldn't give me an answer. But ultimately, it's her who is responsible for the document production, according to our law. The Attorney General, it's not Todd Blanche. It's not the people below them. You can assign tasks to people, but you can't assign your responsibility.
Do you?
Not only does Thomas Massie have no confidence in Pam Bondi, but neither, apparently, according to him, does Pam Bondi. She couldn't say anything. She couldn't have anything to defend what they've been doing because there's no defense for what they're blatantly doing. We're just supposed to roll over and take it. And if you don't, you're going to start getting tracked. By the way, have you seen, there was a quick blurb, I didn't get to read deep into it, but apparently DHS and the Trump administration were pushing for these social media companies and platforms to start giving them information of users who have criticized these guys, you know, almost like fascists do. And also the way that they always said other administrations were doing, because everything that they say and claim that anyone else is doing, they're doing 10 times more than that. But one more thing on Thomas Massie, because as I'm pointing out, his language is getting a little bit more pointed, a little bit more direct. So in a thread where someone was bringing some of this stuff up, Thomas Massie posted this. I'm not suicidal. I eat healthy food. The brakes in my car and truck are in good shape. I practice good trigger discipline and never point a gun at anyone, including myself. There are no deep pools of water on my farm, and I'm a pretty good swimmer, he says. We've been seeing more and more of these people talking about ways, and declaring that they're not suicidal, that there's nothing bugging them, they're not in a state of depression, and none of this is really going on as they continue to confront and call out the most powerful people in the world and their nefarious, disgusting activities. It reminded me of what I've always hung on to every time Virginia Giuffre is brought up, who's one of the most vocal early, at least folks who was listened to as far as their stories about said Jeffrey Epstein. And she posted this back, was that 2019? She says, I'm making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. And she says, I've made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me for the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted, she said. And similar to the way that Martha Raddatz was forced to then say Donald Trump hasn't been accused of any criminal activity regarding this whole story, folks also have to say Virginia Giuffre was committed suicide earlier last year. That's what people have to say, because who knows for sure, except for the fact from the posts from that very woman who could kind of see what was coming. And as we see more of these files coming out, it all makes sense. The accusations, again, those accusations that apparently major news networks can't say were accusations in these files just because the Department of Justice refuses to follow up on them and has always refused to follow up on them. Similar to that, you have to apparently cover your bases to make sure you just say Virginia Giuffre committed suicide because that's what the people told us happened. I just want to keep pointing that out. So now Thomas Massie apparently is on that same line of this, but he's not the only one, at least as far as the notes of not being suicidal. Currently, as far as I've seen, he is the only one, but he's not the only Republican that is now going after Pam Bondi and her, disgusting display there from last week when she was screaming at folks in that hearing.
She was asked a tough question. She discussed the Dow and how high the stock market was doing. It's shameful. And the other thing I saw on photos, I'm not on judiciary, so I wasn't in the hearing, but in the Judiciary Committee, she had her folder open, and you saw an image of a search history of a member of Congress in the software, in the database. Why is the DOJ, why is the Attorney General carrying around a folder of the search histories of members of Congress who only simply want the truth? And she should answer for that. And I think she should come before the Oversight Committee, because I have a lot of tough questions for her.
Now, will Pam Bondi come before the Oversight Committee, as now Nancy Mace is requesting that she does after that disgusting display that she had last week against another committee? I hope. I mean, every time they do step in front of these folks, because, you know, Pam Bondi last year also had a contentious hearing where it didn't make her look very good either. And I'm not sure what we expected differently from this one. So I would assume her ire would now be focused on more Republicans like Nancy Mace, who I've been wondering where she's been. Because, you know, there was those 5 or so Republicans that voted along with Massie and Ro Khanna's bill to go ahead and release these files late last year. She was one of them. And another one was Marjorie Taylor Greene, who then quickly ran right afterwards. And I was like, man, Nancy Mace stayed around, but she's still not talking about it. She even walked out at one point talking about how visibly upset she was just from hearing some of the accounts from those survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, and she vowed to do something about it. She's back in the game. Or maybe I missed the game that she's been on ever since. So it's either one of those two. But she even went even further. Is what she posted specifically about a letter that was released, which I'll get to. She says, I want to be abundantly clear about the DOJ memo released tonight. And tonight being, of course, from Friday. This is from Friday. I want to be abundantly clear, Saturday. I want to be abundantly clear about the DOJ memo released tonight, citing, quote, work product privilege will not save the DOJ from releasing all the Epstein files. I'm not an attorney, and even I know this won't hold up in a court of law. Regarding deliberative process privilege, it would not cover factual information, which is missing from the files. If they can give the names, they can then give them in unredacted files. The list is an admission that they can remove those redactions. Furthermore, federal agencies have already waived privileges with the information they've already disclosed, redacted, and unredacted. If there's an active investigation or prosecution of the DOJ, the DOJ can indeed cite these privileges, but not when they've concluded their investigation and decided no one is going to jail, no one else will be prosecuted, and after they wipe their hands clean, etc. She broke down further about this letter that the Department of Justice released and why basically in a long form she said, that's BS. Here's aspects of that letter. And it wasn't just Pam Bondi, of course, it was also Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's former personal attorney, while he was catching all those cases that apparently Martha Raddatz said he never catches. Whatever, I'm gonna leave her alone. Here, the Justice Department said it's released all files tied to dead sex criminal Jeffrey Epstein. That's according to that letter that I pointed out was from Bondi and Blanche on Saturday. Bondi and Blanche's letter said that the DOJ has fulfilled its obligation. I'm gonna say it again. We know what the stories have been. We know that they're also a month late on it. We also know that what they've released is not all of it. That's what we've been hearing constantly. But here, Bondi and Blanche's letter said that the DOJ has fulfilled its obligation to release files as part of the Epstein Transparency Act and outlined why it redacted certain portions. Here's their quote. In accordance with the requirements of the act and as described in various department submissions to the courts of the Southern District of New York assigned to the Epstein and Maxwell prosecutions and related orders, the department released all records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in the possession of the department that relate to Epstein? Wait, hold on. Saturday night, they released this letter saying they've given all this information. For the past few weeks that they've released, I believe it was just over 3 million of these documents. Everyone's been talking about how there's another several million that they're not releasing. Immediately when people were saying that, this Department of Justice, Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi were not saying, yo, we've released all of it. Unless, again, I missed that. But I know that everyone's been talking about how that's not all of it. But this is another part of their letter that I think they're trying to maybe quiet some people down with this little tricky move here. So this letter also included a lengthy list of government officials and politically exposed persons, as they said, who were named in the files. Here's this list. It includes President Trump. Oh, wow. Ex-President Joe Biden, Tucker Carlson, Bruce Springsteen, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, California Senator Adam Schiff, Robert De Niro, Alec Baldwin, Barbara Streisand, ex-Vice President Kamala Harris, and former President Barack Obama, and among many others. Here's their quote about that list that they released in this letter. Names appear in the files released under the act in a wide variety of contexts. For example, some individuals had extensive direct email contact with Epstein or Maxwell, while other individuals are mentioned only in a portion of a document, including press reporting that on its face is unrelated to the Epstein or Maxwell matters. So this Department of Justice released this letter, first saying that they've released everything, and then number two, named a very curated list of people that included President Trump, which everyone is concerned and wondering why he's been listed thousands and thousands and thousands of times in there, and we continue to get redacted versions of it. But they also included Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, Bruce Springsteen, Robert De Niro, Zuckerberg, and Bezos, so they could have this full, as they see, complete list of which one of these folks is directly spoken about or direct email with Jeff Epstein, and also which one of them was just mentioned, because they threw in Barack Obama and Kamala Harris, which I think from what we've reviewed so far, we don't see any direct contact between them. In fact, the stuff that we've seen about them is them being spoken about by some of these co-conspirators and these folks surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. But they want to cloudy the whole situation by saying, look, we said Donald Trump is in it, but we also said all these people that he hates are also in it too. So let's not jump to conclusions about the degree of the responsibility or culpability mentioned in these files when these folks are named. So is the Department of Justice looking for justice, or are they looking to find some way to cloudy and muddy up these waters and make sure that they're still doing their number one job, which is to protect this guy, Donald Trump? Weird how that works. So let me run this really quick thing from this UK-based Channel 4 News, this public-based network in the UK, about that declaration that they have released all of the Epstein files. After, we already know that's a lie, but maybe you need to see it in video form of their explanation, because they did it pretty well.
These raids on Epstein's properties, his Florida mansion in 2005, and his fancy New York townhouse and sprawling luxury island in 2019 saw dozens of devices, computers, hard drives, and servers bagged and tagged and brought to FBI offices for examination. Now, emails examined by Channel 4 News show investigators discussing those very devices. From the earliest stages, investigators were talking about Epstein's data totaling many, many times what has so far been released. In June 2020, one wrote, "We expect the data to be somewhere around 20 to 40 terabytes," noting that the total capacity of the devices was up to 50 terabytes. Then, as recently as last year, long after the investigations into Epstein and his associates had ended, the figures quoted remained massive. We're looking at a total of approximately 14.6 terabytes of archived data, said another email. To put that in context, it is almost 15,000 gigabytes. But now, a year on from that, the total data released, claimed to be some 300 gigabytes, accounts for just 2% of the total Epstein data that officials were discussing just last year.
2% of all of the files that this same Department of Justice had mentioned before that they have in possession of these files, that now they're claiming they've released all of it. We know it's BS. We already know that. Sometimes we just need to see it in that form, just the degree of their lies. And what else is in it that will continue to allow or force major networks to have to say, Donald Trump hasn't been implicated of anything criminal in these files, at least of the ones that they're showing us, because apparently they've only given us, 2%. Weird how that works. So let me wrap it up with this. I was talking Nancy Mace. I was talking Thomas Massie. I also mentioned this lady who is no longer in Congress, but apparently she's fire breathing all over the place about Donald Trump. She should probably have consulted with herself with this same message.
Pam Bondi, she serves at the pleasure of the president and his administration, and those there are telling her, here's who you can prosecute. No, don't do this. I mean, they told her that the Epstein files, that fight to release the Epstein files came directly from President Trump. And I know a lot of people have a hard time with that, but that is the truth. He fought the hardest to stop these files from being released. And the only reason that he signed our bill that we passed in the House was because he had to. It became a massive political problem. Biggest political miscalculation in Donald Trump's career was calling this a hoax, fighting the release of it, and having Mike Johnson, the speaker, refuse to bring the bill to the floor, to the point where Thomas Massie, myself, Nancy Mace, and Lauren Boebert actually had to vote with all of the Democrats to get it released.
Isn't it weird? Marjorie Taylor Greene is sounding like all the people that she was ignoring, as they said, you know, Donald Trump is controlling this Department of Justice. And, you know, Donald Trump has appointed Pam Bondi specifically so he can control her. You understand that he's also doing this probably in largest part to cover up these Epstein files, because he's the number one person who doesn't want these things released. Him calling this a Democratic hoax was BS from the beginning. Everyone already knew that. Every time he said it, enough people weren't questioning about what the hell does that mean. But as Marjorie Taylor Greene slowly detached herself from him, she then is now saying the same things that everyone else was saying, that apparently she was too quiet or maybe rejected at the time. That is because it didn't benefit her. That is until he threatened her, screamed at her, and said, you look, these Epstein files, I'm looking to protect my friends. My friends could get hurt. So now Marjorie Taylor Greene is exposing the same things that other people already exposed, and she wants credit for stealing someone else's work. And it wasn't even work. It was just observing our reality right in front of our faces. But she didn't want to do that. So I guess welcome to the party, or whoever else wants to listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene instead of what everyone else was already saying. If that helps you, if hearing her tell you what we already knew months ago, last year, then, you know, maybe it helps you. Fine. Take her word for it. It's the same thing, bro. Okay, so that's that. The walls are closing in, so look forward for more violence, look forward for more distractions, although the distractions and the violence are also very important things to pay attention to, so I'm not saying that, but this is what happens is they flail and swing more wildly to get people to not pay attention to what it is that we're seeing and what's slowly unraveling right in front of us. So of course, ignore that BS letter about them releasing all the files. We know that's a lie. And the next thing they say, by the way, will also be a lie. Surprise, I know. Maybe Marge will tell us that later. Did you know that this administration lies? Did you know that they're fascist? Wonder if somebody ever said that. Let's move on to other things. Let's move on to other things. I have to stop sometimes. Let's move on to this. I mean, I gave a few Republicans some credit for actually wanting to do something about Jeffrey Epstein and the cover-up of his child sex trafficking ring that obviously is mentioned and named Donald Trump so many times. I pointed that out. But let's go ahead and shift gears over to a Democrat, a leading Democrat, a Democrat that has control and is apparently the leader of the party, at least in Congress, one Hakeem Jeffries. Did you guys hear or see his interview on the Joy Reid show? Former MSNBC host who shouldn't have been ousted. Ask him some very direct questions about what we should do about ICE.
How can we stop the abuse that is taking place, the targeting of sensitive locations like schools and hospitals and houses of worship and, of course, polling sites now? And how can we stop ICE agents from behaving with violent impunity?
But
now,
wouldn't it stop them if they just stopped being an agency? Just abolish ICE.
But I don't know what you're suggesting in terms of the funding fight that's in front of us now. What we're with the one big ugly, but what we're trying to achieve, for instance, I think the most significant thing that can be done amongst the whole list of things that we've talked about, right, substantively, is to ensure that when ICE agents violate the law, when they violate the law, they can be criminally investigated and prosecuted and are not shielded by this principle of absolute immunity, which is one of the things that we've put on the table.
Hakeem Jeffries, leader of Democrats in the House, asked questions. How can we stop them from doing this? How can we stop ICE from doing the second thing? How can we stop ICE from doing the third? He was asking those questions, not looking for any answers. It's pretty obvious. So once Reid gave him one of those answers, his quick response was, I don't know what you're suggesting. I have no idea what he's. Did you notice the stutter? I don't know what you're saying. I'm here to just talk about problems and then act like I want to do something about those problems. I'm not here for any solutions. Look, he continued on. This is exactly what he was doing. He's going to list all the problems. See if you can find him coming up with any solutions.
And the reason why, just so that I'm clear, my thinking, that we see these people behaving the way they are behaving. It's not just the masks. And of course, we've demanded that the masks come down. It's the fact that they think that the Department of Justice, under Pam Bondi, who's a disgrace, will never investigate them. And if the Department of Justice does investigate them, they'll never charge them or convict them criminally. And even if they are charged and convicted criminally, Donald Trump will eventually pardon them. That's the only rational explanation for why people would engage in such blatant violence and break the law repeatedly.
We know they're covering their faces, they're doing illegal activities, and it's the only reason they want to do that is to keep their identities from being, exposed so that they won't face accountability. We know all that stuff. Hey, this guy who was elected and represents a bunch of people who want something done about it and is supposed to, maneuver things within the government to try and make sure something's done about these things. Stop telling us what we know and start telling us what the F you're gonna do about it. So here comes Reid again. It's like she's listening to him and then she's responding and saying, okay, here's a solution. See if he has an answer or an approval of that solution.
So right, and so sir, if I could just say, if they're willing to break the law of that and they act with so much impunity, is this an agency that can even be reformed? It seems to me that ICE structurally is so flawed that it would perhaps make more sense to end this agency rather than tinker with it. You see what I mean?
What I'm suggesting is that the type of changes that give us the best chance to end the violence now by putting the pressure on the Republicans, because of course, anything that passes now is going to require Republican votes, just a handful in the House and in the Senate, to do the right thing for the American people.
He's going to wait for the Republicans to do the right thing. Okay, so there's our answer. It's nothing, and the idea is to continue to say what the problem is and how you stand against it, and then how that stance turns into you doing absolutely nothing. I'm not sure why he thinks people haven't figured this out yet, that this is what the Democratic Party, establishment Democratic Party continues to do. I don't know why he hasn't figured it out. And, maybe he shouldn't have taken his time to go on Reid's show, because it was also co-hosted by Wajahat Ali. And I think he was just as frustrated as I was listening to that back and forth with Reid. So he came at him a little bit more strong and more forcefully about this bullshit.
Just today, it came out that ICE is using $38 billion to convert warehouses into camps. I'm going to call them concentration camps. Your colleague, Representative Raskin, went to one just yesterday in Maryland and said there were 60 people cramped like sardines in one room who only had access to one toilet. 65% of people taken by ICE had no convictions. That's from the Cato Institute, a right-wing institute. ICE has killed 8 people this year alone that we know of. 2 of them, Renee Nicole Good and Alex Pretty. The latest polls came out this week, AP polls. Over 60% of Americans now disapprove of ICE. That means in 3 weeks, it's gone from 30% to 60%. Now, if I may, I'm going to be a bit blunt here. Leaders lead. And what we've seen is people are impressionable. If you lead on something, people will follow. It seems the wind is behind your back for the first time ever. ICE has a history. CPP has a history of terrorizing Black and brown communities. People are asking themselves, why are we, our taxpayer dollars, paying for masked, lawless men to terrorize our communities, kidnap people, take children, and kill Americans. So I ask you, I'm doing a following up to Joy because I want an answer to this. You said you want to rein in ICE. I'm saying, I'm talking about the long term now. Why not lead and say abolish ICE? Because what you're telling us is you want our taxpayer dollars to pay for a lawless masked armed agency to continue terrorizing our cities. And I'm trying to figure out how you, as a leader, can be telling Americans that their taxpayer dollars should be going to ICE.
Damn, what a question. What a question. Hey, lay it out there. Put how much money is going into it. Look at the things that they're doing that, of course, Hakeem Jeffries may admit that they're doing, but more solutions. Maybe be a leader now, because we know how weakness works among politicians. Once they know that the winds of change are going a certain direction, they start talking that way. I just mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, who decided to do that. That is before she bailed. They will move on with it. But if you keep saying we're waiting for you to do the right thing while I complain about it from a position of some form of power from Hakeem Jeffries, then nothing will ever be done because they're still following behind that guy in the White House who's listed thousands and thousands of times in Epstein files and who's been committing these illegal activities. So let me show you what Hakeem Jeffries said in response to Wajahat Ali and his very direct question. Man, he did not like being called not a leader because all he cares about is being called, a leader. So it pissed him off a little bit.
I don't understand anything that you just said. When I spoke
English.
I don't understand anything that you've just said to me when I've made clear that taxpayer dollars should be used to make life more affordable for the American people, not brutalize or kill them. That's the whole reason we're in this fight right now. That's the whole reason the DHS is getting ready to shut down. That's
so
the whole
abolish
reason
ICE.
why
you agree with me and Joy. Abolish ICE.
That is listen, I'm going to use the language that I want to use. You can use the language that you want to use. And the language that I'm using right now relates to these type of bold, meaningful, dramatic changes that are designed to save lives right now in communities that look like the ones that I represent. And that's the goal.
So let me ask you this. Yeah. And I hear what you're saying.
Every single Democrat together in the House and in the Senate is what we're trying to do to give us the best shot to win this fight right now while we're in the minority.
Just because you say bold, meaningful, and dramatic change doesn't mean that it is. Those are just declarations you're making to try and make yourself look better as you're doing nothing. Or as you say these things and then try and negotiate and ask, where MAGA Republicans' heart they may find it. And where they find their heart and their guts is in Donald Trump's anus. That's where they've stored it. That's where he keeps it. He has all of them, by their stomachs, and he's grabbing them and snatching them around. But Hakeem Jeffries is waiting for them. But he's got some fire now for someone who's going to ask him a question about not being a real leader on this as you keep talking about it. It's weird how that works. But you know what else? Since they're so concerned about how hard it is going to be to abolish ICE, I remember when Democrats had more positions of power and there were people saying, we should probably abolish ICE because they've always been detrimental to people's lives. They've always separated families. They've hurt people. It's just this guy decided to take it to 1,000. And now it's becoming more of a thing that people are willing to say because they're afraid of saying it before, similar to defund the police, because, oh my God, it sounds so bad to defund the police, except for the fact the police were murdering people in the streets and no one cared about it. Instead, Hakeem Jeffries, this is the best illustration. I love this picture. Hakeem Jeffries this is from last year, maybe last summer, because I posted about it and I made fun of his ass. This is Hakeem Jeffries' idea of fighting. This is what Hakeem Jeffries does. He posted this about healthcare on his Instagram and said, protecting your healthcare is as American as baseball, motherhood, and apple pie. And apparently he's going to take a Louisville slugger to Noban and do something about the healthcare issue. Hey, how is the healthcare issue going? Have those Republicans that he's waiting on to do the right thing proposed anything? Has the president, who's talking about every 2 weeks he's got a new healthcare proposal that's going to do better than the ACA, which was of course also sabotaged by that same party? If that's the case, did that picture help anybody? Hey, did that Louisville slugger get anyone health care? By the way, maybe this guy shouldn't take a picture where someone's like 6'4" standing over him to where he's holding a baseball bat and it makes him look even smaller. You shouldn't do that. It doesn't look tough. There's perspective shots that you should take. Maybe you should get your social media folks to tell you things like that. Anyways, These are maybe the types of people that we need leading this party now. We talk about the really old elderly folks from both parties that stay there until they pass away. But maybe we should start injecting people like Justin Jones, state rep out in Tennessee. Maybe we should inject more people like him because he's been saying it for a while.
Hey, y'all, it's Representative Jones. I'm here at the Tennessee Capitol. What we witnessed yesterday with ICE killing a woman for legally observing their unconstitutional activities is a red line that we have crossed, and which requires us to not just talk about abolishing ICE, which is now the moderate position, but to say that ICE is a terror organization, an agency that must be reined in, must be arrested, prosecuted, and held accountable to the highest extent of the law, that we need to have hearings, that we need to address this rogue agency that's acting as an American Gestapo, acting like the other masked folks from my state who used to go around in white sheets terrorizing communities. This is what this agency is, and it's up to us now to not just release statements, but to look at ways that we in positions of political office can hold them accountable at various levels of government to get these folks out of our city. They're not welcome here in Nashville. They're not welcome in Minneapolis. They're not welcome in the United States of America. ICE has got to go.
It should be easy to make your point based off of what is that we're seeing. And then when folks see it and they reject it because they're afraid, like Hakeem Jeffries appears to be afraid, you say it again. And then you say it again. And then you point it out again. So as we keep seeing people getting assaulted in the streets, which we keep seeing happen, we should point out, yo, there's a way we can stop this. It's really easy. There's a way we can stop this or push for it to stop. And you fight for it long enough until those winds of change then start affecting all the weak people in Congress, because there's tons of them. Because you know what they don't, this MAGA Republican Party never concerned themselves with? They never concerned themselves with being held to any account, with eliminating as many agencies as possible. USAID, they got rid of that and said, F you. They were trying to go after SNAP benefits, which I think they still did. They destroyed so many agencies, kicked so many people out of very necessary programs that actually helped the American people, and gave two middle fingers to people who said, yo, you can't do that. But we're afraid with our leadership to get rid of the organization, or fight to get rid of the organization that's in the streets, the way that many people who had Trump derangement syndrome said would happen with our tax dollars that they keep stealing from us. We're afraid to do that. But people like Tom effing Homan can put his face in front of cameras and continue to push this same propaganda about how great everything is. Or in this particular case, about how they want to keep taking more people's rights. He's not ashamed of it. Why is Hakeem Jeffries ashamed of his supposed stance? Here he is talking. Here's Tom Homan. He's talking about taking away more people's rights and invading more people's homes.
Wasn't.
What's so wrong about obtaining a judicial warrant to enter private property?
That's not what the federal law requires. Congress themselves wrote the Immigration Nationality Act that gave power on administrative warrant to arrest somebody. And that's what's set up in federal statute. So if Congress wants that changed, then Congress can legislate. But right now, ICE is acting within the framework of federal statutes enacted by Congress and signed by a president.
Well, as I recall, you have previously said that you thought judicial warrants were necessary for searches. There's been this change in policy in that now ICE can go with these administrative warrants that are issued by ICE personnel. Why your change of heart? I mean, clearly there, at one point at least, you agreed that was necessary.
No, I don't have a change of heart. What I understand, and I wasn't part of the discussion, is that DOJ interpret that law saying in certain circumstances, administrative warrant on somebody that has a final order removal already had a due process issued by a federal judge to enter premises. I'm not a part of that discussion, but that's the DOJ guidance.
Weird. Tom Homan can have a change of heart, or he's just following the DOJ as they have a change of heart about, you know, illegal searches of people's homes and kicking in doors. Suddenly, Tom Homan's all on board. But I keep hearing about another weak Democrat, Tim Walz up in Minnesota, talking about how he trusts Tom Homan because Tom Homan is a real professional crime fighter. Isn't it weird? So Tom Homan is willing to go this direction. It's almost like this whole MAGA Republican Party is willing to go this direction because they're taking their orders from the fascists. Here's Mike Johnson.
Okay. Imagine if we had to go through the process of getting a judicial warrant, an additional warrant to go and apprehend people who we know are here illegally. how much time would that take? We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough time. It would take decades probably to do that. The people who are advocating for that don't want any immigration enforcement. They do not. Okay.
With straight faces, these Republicans keep talking about how they're willing to bypass normal judicial warrants to go in and break into people's homes. There's no shame. There's no shame. Why is it that folks who are supposed to be opposing them and standing up for American people and the Constitution that they keep saying they all love so much, how come they're afraid? It goes down the line. Remember Lindsey Graham did the same thing?
Judicial warrants. That's a joke. If you had to get a warrant for 15 million people, nobody'd be deported. This is an administrative action by the President of the United States. You're not entitled to be here. We can administratively send you out. They want to go to a federal judge, which means to me, they don't want to do a damn thing. So,
did you notice he sounds just like Mike Johnson? Judicial warrants in Lindsey Graham's mind are a joke. Think about how we have to go and actually talk to a judge and, prove that we can actually go after this person. We just want to say so and then do it on our own, like Nazis do. It's like they all say it. Listen, I could have a list that goes for this entire hour where these guys are flipping on our rights and continue to say the same talking point. Here's Ron Johnson. He's another MAGA Republican.
Again, we see what has happened. They've been shot at. They've had their vehicles rammed. They have been doxxed. Why would they want to remove their masks? Because they want these officers exposed. They want them afraid. They don't want them to carry out their enforcement actions. They want judicial warrants, again, which would completely neuter ICE's ability to apprehend the 650,000 criminals that Biden let into this country. Again, you have to look at the actual reality situation. Don't listen to what Democrats say. Again, they're trying to be sneaky. They're sneakily trying to neuter ICE here.
Which one of those Republicans do you think Hakeem Jeffries is going to convince to do the right thing when it comes to abolishing ICE or having that stance about doing something about what we're all seeing in the streets? Because as we're seeing what's happening in the streets, they're actually defending all that stuff that's happening in the streets and calling these murders that we keep seeing in these horrible detention facilities and the conditions there normal. So what part of their mindset is going to get them to change their minds is what I wonder what Hakeem Jeffries is really thinking. Or is he just thinking, I need to get by to this point and maybe we can win an election and I can get back into some more positions of power and I can call myself House Leader Hakeem Jeffries? Because really that's where it starts and where it ends, it seems. But here's my last thing on this. Quick flashback. Hey, I remember when this pea-headed looking sumbitch right here, back in May of last year, floated this idea of suspending habeas corpus. I remember that. And I remember, those of us with Trump derangement syndrome called it out. And now look at where we got with the entire party talking about kicking in people's doors so that people like him can just tell them that they can.
Hold on, there's a question back there first.
Quick questions. First, President Trump has talked about potentially suspending habeas corpus to take care of the illegal immigration problem. When could we see that happen, do you think?
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. At the end of the day, Congress passed a body of law known as the Immigration Nationality.
And he went on and on and on. But the whole point here is that the courts and the judges have to do the right thing based off of an unelected guy who's standing behind Donald Trump and telling him all the hateful things he's supposed to do and then say. He's the one that's supposed to be controlling all of this because he's a racist in the White House. That's who that guy is. And apparently Hakeem Jeffries is looking for ways that all of the puppets that are too afraid to stand up to him or who believe in all that stuff too, he's waiting for them to do the right thing. Okay, I got one more. Let's go ahead and barrel through this. Quick programming note, you guys. John is going to be going solo today. I got to jump out of here right near the top of the hour. I've got many other things happening. I told him the other weekend, and man, that kid called me a traitor. Can you believe that? Sorry, I'm not going to be on the damage report this morning, so I'll be wrapping up here in the next few minutes, and then I gotta shove off and do more things. So let me hurry up and squeeze this in, because as we're talking about all this that's going down, well, I think sometimes we need to have some reminders sometimes of what it is that the majority of this country, as was before, feels about this president and maybe how it's going to shake down for him. That is, if our elected leaders start doing something in response to it, the way that the people who elected them to do.
This President's Day, some bad news in the polling for President Trump. His approval rating hitting new lows. CNN's Harry Enton is running the numbers on this one for us.
Look at this. I got 4 numbers across for you on this screen here. They are all second-term lows for the given pollster. What are we talking about? AP Newark, 26 points below water. NBC, 22 points below water. Yahoo YouGov, 20 points below water. Quinnipiac, 19 points below water. So we're ranging from negative 19 points all the way to negative 26 points. You know, Kate, there's this question that folks keep asking, you know, where is the floor for Donald Trump? And I'm not sure there is a floor, because if there is one, Donald Trump, at least in term number 2, has just fallen through it to another low level.
Harry Enton, everyone. I'm sorry. Sometimes I like to start with him. Through it to a new low, side, left, negative. Harry Enton is he's a funny guy. But it's a point that needs to be taken, though. Every time we look up, he talks about how this guy has created a brand new low for his administration, his approval ratings. And as we heard, Donald Trump also said, I just don't believe it. We've gotten to the point where Donald Trump just doesn't believe the polling because it's inconvenient for him to believe those polling. So he just doesn't. But things are falling off all over the place based off of his plans, his departures from normalcy, and his control again over this Department of Justice. Destructive things happen from that. And sometimes we don't know the details behind what it is that falls off and how it really affects their professionalism and what is it they can do in the future. Scott McFarlane over from CBS News, he breaks down things in the morning, and I really like the way that he pointed out how bad things are really getting, and the wheels are coming off in all aspects of this administration. But, you know, they only going to work on bare bones anyway. Here's Scott McFarlane.
If you can, think back to when you were in high school or middle school. It was one of those school days where you had a substitute teacher or maybe one teacher monitoring 2 or 3 different classes at the same time because of a staff shortage. Obviously, in that situation, things can unravel pretty quickly. Behavior could fall off a ledge. Things go untended to. There's less experience in the room or in the hallway to keep an eye on those kids. We see something symmetrical happening inside the Trump administration's Department of Justice, where they have been losing people hand over fist by the hundreds, if not the thousands, in this first year. People who've been fired for their connections to Trump cases, those who've resigned saying they want nothing to do with this new politicized Department of Justice, but they're short on people, which leaves offices with less experience, less seniority, less institutional memory as they chase child pornographers and gun runners and possible terror cases. They're undermanned. This is an undermanned Department of Justice now. They've lost a lot of people. He says the experience that has gone should halt any American because they are less equipped to protect us, to chase terrorists, to chase criminals in America. And he says there is no quick fix to that. Though the Department of Justice tells us they are hiring, they're actively hiring, you can't just replace that overnight. For now, proverbially, America's in the hands of more substitute teachers.
Isn't it weird? So in the Department of Justice, so many of the professionals are either leaving or have been pushed out, have been fired because of all those things that Donald Trump hates, because he's controlling all of this. But what's left in place is a bunch of incompetent people who don't know what they're doing, and their only job is to follow behind the people who tell them to do illegal things, go after his political enemies, try and prosecute anyone that they just don't like, and take away Americans' rights while protecting the criminal in the White House. It's like the people who said all of the white supremacists are the only people that are qualified to do anything in this country. They keep packing the place with a bunch of white supremacists who are unqualified and don't know what they're doing. It's like ironic or something. But what then happens is internationally, I mean, home, he's losing all the support. And internationally, the anger gets louder. And also the white supremacist screeds get spoken from even people like Marco Rubio. This is at the Munich Security Conference. I just want to give you guys a nice broad look as to what's going on at home here with the approvals and also the destruction of our agencies, and also then what it is that Marco Rubio is telling international audiences about what they want to do internationally, which is, you know, violence and white supremacy. Watch, listen to the wording he takes.
We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. We want.
You hear that? So Marco Rubio is talking about we don't want allies that are shackled by guilt and shame. Of course, it's always words for people who have done destructive and devastating and violent things to other peoples and then said, yo, that was my great-great-great-grandfather that did those things. It's not me. I'm just carrying on that legacy in a different form. Also, he wants some allies that are proud of their culture and heritage and are willing to help us defend it. Which culture, which heritage, and which people are you looking to defend? He's talking, again, to an international audience. Which parts of international countries and international audiences is he referring to when he's talking about the allies that he'd like to have that share the same culture and heritage, and therefore we're going to defend it together, and let's not have any more shame for the destructive things that we've done? Who do you think he's talking to? What types of people do you think he's talking to overseas? Here's the answer to that question. I'm a spoiler alert. It's people like Viktor Orban of Hungary. Here he is talking about him.
It is the kind of thing that I think, for example, I can say to you with confidence that President Trump is deeply committed to your success, because your success is our success. Because this relationship we have here in Central Europe through you is so essential and vital for our national interests in the years to come.
Viktor Orban's coordination and cooperation, or at least our coordination and cooperation with Viktor Orban, is apparently something that's going to be something that Marco Rubio is deeply committed to the success of them. It's weird. So he goes over there, hangs out with Viktor Orban. I just want to show you guys, this photo op that he had. There's no sound behind this, but apparently he was hanging out with Viktor Orban because they're best buddies. And since Donald Trump has been in office, these two guys then take photos to try and help Viktor Orban out. Isn't it weird how the kind of allies that Marco Rubio is talking about gaining and sharing the culture and civilization and heritage with are people like Viktor Orban, and he has no shame in walking up, taking pictures with, and then shaking hands with him? That's before he says that all of our interests all coincide with each other. It's odd how they're blatant about what it is that they want. Let me make it even more clear from someone that knows more than I do on this, because this is why Marco Rubio is hanging out with Viktor Orban and propping him up. This is from Jürgen Naudet. Jürgen Naudet, I had to look him up because he pointed this out, and I for now, I'm taking his word for it. He's a German supporter of Ukraine. He's active in the NAFO community, which is an online group countering Russian propaganda. This is what he wrote about Rubio's trip and why he's doing that. Rubio declared to Europe in Munich on Saturday, do what Trump wants or will withdraw. And this is the way that Jürgen here described the Europeans. He says they were naive and they were thrilled and gave him a standing ovation. And he said barely 2 days later, the same Rubio is in Budapest with Viktor Orban, which we just saw, shaking hands, signing a civilian nuclear agreement, and publicly declaring President Trump is deeply committed to your success because your success is our success. We just saw that. Here's where the reasons come. This is a blatant campaign support for Orban, whose party is trailing in the polls ahead of this parliamentary election on April 12th of this year. Orban is the EU's perpetual critic, regularly blocking EU decisions, withholding aid to Ukraine, maintaining close ties to Putin, and being punished by Brussels with billions frozen in funds for rule of law violations. So he points out that Rubio's behavior is hypocritical and cynical, of course. But have you noticed? Now we keep getting ourselves entangled, not now, always been getting ourselves entangled in foreign elections, foreign leadership. But in this particular case, it's blatant and straightforward about how they're supportive of Viktor Orban, Vladimir Putin, and against all these other things and the norms of allies that we used to coordinate with. I mean, sometimes. Because again, this is nothing new. It's just a lot more blatant because these white supremacists are like, yo, shared culture? Why would we have shame for all the things that's happened in the past and destruction of other countries? We're looking to do even more of that. So let me wrap and finish with this. Josh Rogan, author, was pointing this out on CNN because he was also at that Munich conference there, and he's pointing out the way many European countries now see the United States of America. And oddly, they see the United States of America in similar ways that many Americans now see the United States of America, which is why this fascist administration has such low approval numbers. Here's Josh Rogan. Think about it and understand, just because we're in this country, on this continent, doesn't mean that people don't see us the way that we're projecting ourselves to be.
Today, most of what I heard from European countries is, how do we protect ourselves from the United States? They call it de-risking. It means reducing their dependence on us because they don't believe that U.S. foreign policy is going to return to a pro-Europe stance anytime soon. The Europeans, for very understandable reasons, are looking elsewhere. They're looking towards India. They're looking towards China. They're looking towards Africa. They're looking towards South America. They want to form alliances with other middle powers in order to not be dependent on China or the United States. And who could blame them? Okay, now, whether or not they're able to pull it off is another question. But until something changes in U.S. foreign policy, the mood here in Munich will be, well, the United States is no longer a dependable ally. And the facts bear out that case.
Weird. I said it, I think, a few weeks ago. Sometimes you have to be able to recognize, and we've never been good at this in this country because it's very, isolated with our ego, is that when we're the bad guys and everyone else is screaming how we're the bad guys, which many other countries have been screaming for a very long time, maybe we should understand that that's going to have to start at home with getting rid of the people who've always, and now even more blatantly, are leading as bad guys. And now it's stretching internationally because other countries are seeing it, bro. They're seeing it. And they want them to see it. That's why Marco Rubio was on these speaking tours and hanging out with Viktor Orban. It's not like hidden. They're not trying to hide it. They don't think they're being covert. They just don't care. Because they're Nazis. in case Marjorie Taylor Greene or someone just figured that out just this week. That's it for me, you guys. You head over to the damage report. Look at that. I locked it in right within the hour. I hope you guys didn't take off yet. But if you're about to, if you haven't yet, like this stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. Sorry I can't be with you guys for the next hour and a half. Tell John I say hey. I'll see you guys later. See you later, Ma.